and thank you for joining this session that will be about the power of people analytics and how it can help accelerate the people agenda beyond the HR function. If you're watching this recording, I should probably start by apologizing because this should have been a live stream. But apparently, the technique is causing me some kind of issue, and I was unable to log on appropriately. So instead, you have to do with the recording. I hope we will still get to do the question round at the end, but if that is not the case, you are more than welcome to reach out to me on my email. A short introduction of myself. My name is Louise, and I work as a rewards and analytics specialist at Trustpilot, and have been doing so for the past year and a half. I'm part of a small analytics team that does people analytics, but also rewards management and process optimization and automation through tool support. I really like the cross between traditional human resource management and the more data-driven approach. So I spent most of my days buried in an Excel sheet. That is what I like to do. But for the past year, I've also been project managing the rollout of global job architecture here at Trustpilot. So sometimes I also go out and speak to people and engage a little. But today is about people analytics. And before we start, I just wanted to give you a quick introduction to the company I work for. Trustpilot was founded in Copenhagen in 2007 with the humble ambition to become the world's most powerful review platform, free and open to all. Today we are about 700 trustees in 8 different locations around the world. We're still growing our headcount and will continue to do so in the years to come. But back to today's session. The purpose of this session is to illustrate how the utilization of people analytics can drive the people agenda way beyond the HR function and accelerate change in an organization. And I think the best way to do this is to showcase it through an example from my own relatively short career working with people analytics. And that is an analysis we did a while back that we call the cost of employee attrition or employee turnover, as some might prefer to call it. And just to set the stage before I begin, please remember that the primary purpose of this presentation is not to drag you through a detailed step-by-step guide on how to do a cost of attrition analysis, but rather to provide you with an example of how people analytics can give you that extra element in your argumentation to achieve higher impact when communicating with the rest of the business. Now, if any of you are looking to do a cost of attrition analysis in the near future on your own organization, I'm very happy to share with you more details about how exactly we're meant to do about this. But just keep in mind that that's not the focus here. The focus is to tell a story about how you can drive change in your organization using people analytics as a tool of communication. But you have my email in case you want a more detailed step-by-step guide, okay? But let's get started. And let's start at the beginning. Around last year, this time, when our newly appointed CHRO was getting ready for her first annual board meeting. The issue we wanted to address was an attrition rate significantly above the industry standard, threatening our ability to achieve our ambitious goal of world domination at record speed. We had many ideas on how to improve, but it would require engagement across multiple functions and locations and involve all layers of leadership. A massive investment in our people, but how could we convince the business that this would worth their attention and their resources? The issue was that the attitude towards the problem varied among senior leaders. Many of them could see the challenge, but were focused on explaining and legitimizing the issue rather than prevent it. They were saying things like, "We're a startup, so this is only natural. Isn't this just the cost of doing business? We have a big sales population, and they're always on the move. Our employees are younger than our industry peers and therefore difficult to retain." The points they were making were not exactly wrong, but they were also not very constructive. They made it seem like high attrition was inevitable for a business like ours and therefore not worth investing in. Before we could start fixing what was obviously broken, we had to convince the business how hurtful and limiting the attrition was in achieving our ambitious goals for the future. We needed to make them see what we saw, but this could only be done by changing our own way of communicating. And so we started to understand our audience and figure out how they normally communicate. And so we wanted to adapt our traditional HR argumentation to an actual business case using the universal language of money. And so we started to monetize our argumentation through a data-driven discovery process. We wanted to calculate the cost of attrition. And so we did some research and found a long list of cost-heavy elements related to an employee leaving. In the literature, we found there were many suggestions as to what the cost of attrition might be in an organization. However, they often varied, and we weren't always sure what assumptions were used. We wanted to make sure that the number was representative for us and our business, and not inflated with cost that we could not back up or verify. We therefore decided to draw all of our own processes in an employee's life cycle, all the way from recruitment to offboarding, and we focused only on the elements that were quantifiable and possible to monetize. We interviewed stakeholders involved in the processes and estimated the time allocated. We also looked at our accounting books to estimate costs for agency, relocation, external training, equipment, and so forth. And then we also looked at sales data to estimate the lost revenue generated in an employee's onboarding period and ramp-up period. Along the way, there were many elements that we had to disregard or exclude simply because we knew they would be too difficult to measure and require assumptions that could later be questioned by our audience. Elements that we had to include were lost productivity before an employee leaves because of lack of engagement, vacancy cost, loss of knowledge, skills, and network, the cost of lost system licenses, lost departmental productivity, loss of momentum, negative impact on culture and team engagement, and negative impact on employer brand. We wanted our analysis to be bulletproof and not give anyone reason to believe that the figures we presented were inflated, as it would only steer the conversation away from the issue we wanted to address. And so we excluded all of these probably very expensive and valid costs. And finally, we had a figure, the cost of attrition per labor, a very conservative number, but a number that we knew we could back up 100%. And so we wanted to kind of set the stage. We use the analogy of filling a tub without a plug in it. We wanted to show how it would impact our bottom line if we continue growing at rapid speed without fixing the issues we were facing. And more importantly, what could be saved by investing in our people instead of letting them slip away? And so we used the result derived from the previous exercise to do scenario-based modeling, showcasing that growing our headcount without improving our attrition would be exactly like filling a tub with a big hole in it. By calculating the cost and potential savings, we were able to build a business case highlighting the benefits of investing in our people instead of letting them slip away. And so our business case looked a little like this. A business case including both the data-driven argumentation derived from our analysis and the softer measures traditionally used by HR professionals. We wanted to compare what was lost by doing nothing or keeping with the status quo, and what could be gained by getting on top of this issue. And so we compared how it would be like growing at a high cost rather than more profitable. How it would be like to waste resources on non-value adding activities related to onboarding, recruitment, offboarding processes, rather than investing in more value-adding activities, such as developing our employees, making them better at what they're doing. We also compared how it would be like to retain our top talent instead of losing them, and how to attract people instead of struggling with a weak employment brand. We could also see that if we continued down the same path, we would struggle with productivity and that we would put pressure on our engagement and as weaken our culture. So this was the kind of argumentation that our CHRO brought to the board meeting. The report was met with some skepticism, but we knew that our findings were solid and showed only a conservative version of the truth. The analysis and assumptions were based on our organization and our processes, and therefore the results could not be ignored. The cost of attrition analysis changed the conversation around. It made it be about what we could do to fix it, instead of trying to excuse why it was there in the first place. And so putting people at the center of success became the top strategic goal for the executive leadership team in 2020. Not just for the people team, but for the entire executive leadership team. And so the cost of attrition analysis enabled a very high impact at a strategic level. It leveraged the approval of our people strategy. It helped communicate our reality in a universal language. It made the people agenda a high strategic priority beyond the HR function. And it enabled us to get a much larger budget allocated. So remember, the purpose was to showcase how the utilization of people analytics can drive the people agenda beyond the HR function and help accelerate change. And I think what is probably my key takeaway from all of this is that using people analytics will enable you to reach an audience that sometimes seems to be speaking a foreign language and really help build a closer partnership between HR and the rest of the business. Now, did the cost of attrition analysis help us uncover an issue we did not already know was there? No, it did not. But it helped us communicate it in a language that the rest of the business speaks. And that's my point. People analytics and the insight it can help derive is valuable in every HR function. But using it as a tool to engage and communicate with the rest of the business is when you really start to drive change. And so some of the recommendations I have for the ones of you that are maybe not using people analytics currently, but want to start somehow, I would say just do it. I think Trustpilot is really lucky to have a CHRO that finds it very natural to argue with data, to want to look at data, to want to communicate data. But even if you're not there currently, I just want to tell you that it does not require an army of data scientists, and that not all analysis revolves around advanced statistics. The cost of attrition analysis was not based on very advanced statistics. It was a pretty basic exercise where we basically just went out into the business, interviewed the internal stakeholders involved in our different processes, and then started to gather all this input that we had from accounting books, performance data, and so forth into one big sheet, where we then did a lot of weighted averages, and then at the end had a number for what on average was the cost of somebody leaving. And then we did scenario-based modeling with that number. But again, it was pretty basic. It was about using our current attrition rate, our headcount forecast, and then what it would cost every time somebody left. And that's how we could kind of turn the attrition rate up and down and show what it would do to our bottom line. A second recommendation I would come with is that you share these insights from your analysis with your team. Empower them to use data in their day-to-day. And so an example I can give from our own HR function is that after we decided that attrition was going to be a focus area of ours, we started making attrition data available to basically everybody in the organization. We incorporated it in all of our KPIs, both for the people team, but also for other leaders in the organization. We made a pretty simple Excel dashboard for all of our HR business partners, so that when they were having conversation with leaders about the development of their team, the development of them, attrition was part of a natural part of that conversation, and that we could track it on an ongoing basis. We could see when it would spike in a department and then act on it quickly. So that's, I think, it for me. Once again, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact me. I'm happy to answer anything, basically. And enjoy the rest of the summit. Thank you.